Welcome everyone to our first guest speaker event with Ms. Sodipo. We'll get started in a few minutes.
Welcome everyone to our first guest speaker event with Ms.
Hi,
Sodipo.
and we'll get started in a few
Welcome
minutes.
everyone.
Welcome to our virtual meeting with Ms. Sodipo. Good evening, I'm Arushi. Just to introduce myself, I am one of Humanity Exists Everywhere's co-founders, and I'm stoked to be here tonight.
I'm Conchita, and I am also a co-founder of our IH Hope campaign.
Before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce Humanity Exists Everywhere. Humanity Exists Everywhere is a multimedia approach to inform the community about IHL and its importance. For more information about our campaign, please visit our website, Instagram, and YouTube channel. Now, without further ado, tonight's guest speaker is Ms. Sodipo, and on behalf of Humanity Exists Everywhere, we welcome you with open arms. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to be starting off the discussion, and we will have the opportunity for audience questions towards the end of the event. So that means anytime you have a question, pop it in the chat and we will get to it. Ms. Sodipo, why don't you begin by introducing yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that very warm welcome. I am honored and privileged to know this group of amazing young women, and I got to spend some time with them earlier this year, last school year, and I'm just really grateful for this opportunity. So, about myself, I am currently the program manager for the Center for Human Rights and Humanitarian Studies at Brown University. And it's been a bit of a journey. I have a background in international humanitarian law, human rights law, and terrorism law. I've also worked in the field with project development and implementation. I've had the opportunity to work with refugees. We'll cover a lot of what I've done. But I think what's been something that I've been consistently passionate about from early on has been human rights, and particularly international humanitarian law, which is the law of war. So that's a little bit about myself, but not all of who I am. So we can kind of start whenever you guys are ready.
For our first question, you received your master's from countries abroad, right? How was your experience?
Well, I guess it starts a little bit before then. But my parents and I immigrated from Nigeria to the U.S. And so I was constantly brought up with this motto that my parents have always said, like, know where you come from, like realize that you have opportunities that not everyone has. You have chances, you have the ability to do things that not everyone from where we came from or from similar backgrounds has the opportunity. So make the most of it. So I have always looked and have not let anything limit my exploration, which has been good and bad, but crazy. And so I decided, I was like, when I was applying for college, I was going to apply in the US and then wherever else I could get into. And I realized for some of the things that I was interested in, it might be better to like do my master's overseas. And that's how I kind of got into it. So it started off with a postgraduate diploma, which is kind of like a master's, except for that master's, I would have needed to write a thesis, and I didn't want to do that yet. But it gave me a good introduction into the British education system, which is where I then did another master's. And then I started working. And then a few years ago, I went back and I did another master's in Switzerland. So it's one of those things where I've loved the fact that I have such a weirdly diverse educational background. Every country has a different way that they approach education, that they approach how they teach their students, how they interact with their students. So it's been good, it's been bad, it's been ugly, but it's also been like learning, like full of learning and full of exploration and exposure, which I think I highly recommend to anyone, whether it's a semester abroad or an internship that lets you travel. But travel, it's a great way to learn more about yourself and about what you're interested in.
Learning abroad sounds like so much fun. On to our next question. How did you first get involved with Red Cross?
So I actually had come home. There was a bit of a family emergency. So I came home and I was working, got a job that was around the corner from the house. And I had a conversation with my then manager. And he was telling me that one of the things that he loves to do, that no matter where he finds himself, he likes to volunteer. Because he was like, there are things that I'm really passionate about, and I may not be in the sector to like do that as my profession, but it doesn't mean I don't need to give back, or I don't feel the urge to give back or to explore that. And I was like, that's really like amazingly profound, because I think sometimes we forget that. Like, you think of like I volunteer because I'm applying to university, or I volunteer because I have to do something else. But this was just something that he always felt led to do. So I was like, what am I passionate about that I'm not using that I could use in some way? And the American Red Cross has an amazing team out of the Washington, D.C. office that leads this initiative to educate the U.S. population about international humanitarian law. And I was like, I have a degree in this. I can definitely help. And so it was an application to volunteer. And after talking to one of the amazing staff members, they were like, would you like a job? Because you're very passionate about this. And I feel like we should like explore this. And that's how I started working at the American Red Cross. And that's why I was really passionate about the Youth Action Campaign and working with students and sharing that knowledge, because it is something that I've had since I was in high school, which was weird. But it's been consistent throughout my life. And I think it's led to some really interesting things. And so, yeah.
Was there ever an experience or a key moment in your life that you realized that you love to help people?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like there have been a couple of, I call them aha moments. And I could tell you a list of them. I don't know if there's one in particular, but there have been a couple of moments where I thought I was just helping someone out, and that the way that they responded back, I realized it's literally the least I could do. Does that make sense? Like, it wasn't a big thing. One in particular that sticks in my mind is I was in England. I was talking to someone, and they just turned to me and they said, I really appreciate the fact that whenever I talk to you, I don't feel like any judgment. Like, you're very open. You let me say what I need to say, and then you like strategize with me on what to do next. And I was like, but that's a conversation. She goes, no, it's not a conversation. She's like, they're not all like that. And she was like, and if I tell you that I want to do something weird, you're always like, oh, wait, I think I can help you do that. Let's figure out how to like make this dream a reality. And she goes, but you do that with everyone. And I was like, but that's what you do. And she's like, no. Like, this is a gift. Like, you need to like continue to do this. And so, yeah, it's just, even like when you're trying to explain something to someone or you're tutoring someone, how you approach it sometimes leads to like a revelation about yourself, or at least that's what people have told me. I don't know if that's completely true, but I've taken note of them over the years, and every time I've listened to that statement, or I've delved in deeper into that aspect of myself or what I'm passionate about, I'm not disappointed, and I'm pretty much happy with the results.
So you just talked about how you helped others. Now you helped us so much as our IHL YAC coordinator last year. Why did you choose to work as that? What was your favorite part?
Honestly, you guys were like, being able to do that was my favorite part of my job when I was with the Red Cross. Like, absolute favorite part. You asked questions, you had ideas. Sometimes we would talk, and I would feel like I was just talking to you, but then you guys would come back with a comment or a question. I was like, oh, this is great. And it's just really exciting to see you guys connect dots. Because I always tell people, I was like, IHL, people are like, it's law. It's something that's really big picture. It's done overseas in these like really intense moments. It doesn't affect our day-to-day lives. And I was like, but it does. Like, it's literally the building blocks of human rights. It's part of business interactions. It's part of international trade. It's part of how governments deal with each other. It's part of what we understand to be diplomacy and international relations. Like, what we do in the worst of our interactions with one another as human beings dictates how we treat each other when everything is good and rosy. And so that's one of my passions. And so being able to share that with students, and then seeing you guys take that and then run with it and do things that are absolutely like really, really cool. I've shared it with some professionals already that I've had the pleasure of meeting. I sing your praises all the time. So thank you for saying those kind words. But it's very much a reflection of you guys and your enthusiasm. So.
Thank you, Ms. Sodipo. On to our next question. So, have you ever been in a disaster situation firsthand before?
I would say probably post disaster. I've done a bit more development, and then I've also had the opportunity to work in a refugee camp. So uh, not necessarily on the ground in the first 24 hours to 48 hours. There are people who specialize in those high heat situations. I've definitely done the training and have worked with them, but it's very, very intense. And even to come in like a couple of months later, or even a year later, after the situation has been somewhat examined and explored, you still are dealing with washed out roads or a lack of resources that you would not necessarily think of. And so there have been times where simple things is like where you're getting your water from. Is it safe to drink that water, or is the safe water something you actually have to boil? That I didn't know until like months later when I got sick, and I was like, oh no, like the safe water actually wasn't safe water. It was just partly filtered, and you still were expected to boil it and treat it at home. So like learning those things was really eye-opening. But like one of the things that I can say was that no matter where I found myself, I was surrounded by amazing people. A lot of the people that I was there to assist and help with their lives, they probably have blessed me or encouraged me in some way. It's always been really eye-opening. They always have a great sense of humor. So like even when there was in one of the camps that I worked in, they were by the coast. And so whenever it rained really, really bad, their sewage system wasn't the best. And so everything would kind of just rise back up. So I remember I was trying to hop through and not damage my shoes too much. And they're like, just jump in and just kind of like deal with it. Like hopping through is not going to get you anywhere any faster. You just have to deal with the situation and know that those shoes are probably going to be destroyed and go through it. So it was a nice, there have been nice moments. So.
Why do you think that IHL is so important?
Like I said earlier, like I honestly do see how it connects to everything. International humanitarian law is not just the Geneva Conventions. It's how individuals and countries and governments take these ideas and these principles and hold ourselves and each other accountable. So let's say that during, it actually goes to the beginning of humanitarian aid as a whole. It started with this idea that when someone is hurt, no matter what side of the conflict they're involved in, they have the right, as a human, they have the right to have access to medical care. I feel like that's undeniable. Like if you see someone hurt, you go to help them. And then it goes even deeper that like when civilians are in an area that is being attacked or is near the war front, you don't treat them aggressively or in a negative fashion. You're not trying to destroy their lives. If anything, you want to ensure that they're okay, because no matter what side of the conflict you're on, you want their support. Like it goes to like just those little things. I mean, how governments treat their citizens, much less citizens of a place that they're trying to take over or they're trying to protect the rights of. That idea comes from IHL. The UN has this amazing philosophy called the responsibility to protect. And it's this idea that no matter what's going on in the world, we have the responsibility to intervene to protect the rights of someone else. Does that lead to IHL or human rights? Some people will argue, but I think they're still very much connected and very much united. There's a lot of research that's being done now on the links between human rights and IHL, because I mean, as much as we've separated them throughout history, they're very much intertwined and they lean up against each other. So. very long answer for your short question, but I think it's really important to stress. So.
I love that answer. What is your favorite part of working as the Brown University Human Rights Program Manager?
I'm really lucky to have this job, and I'm very grateful for it. It's a beautiful merging of exactly what I was just talking about. Humanitarian action, like working with international and national humanitarian organizations, coming up with research projects and helping them look at some of the data they've collected as they've gone into emergency situations, coming up with better practice suggestions, talking to policymakers on a national and international level, talking to local partners who are also impacted, and looking at the big picture has been amazing. But it also means that like I'm surrounded by academics. So sometimes my questions of like, why do we do this? It's a history question. So knowing the context of how this developed or how this principle was born, or knowing that during the Franco-Prussian War, these were the contentions, and this is how military interactions started. So when Henry Dunant, happened to go through the Battle of Solferino, and he saw this, like why it shook him so hard was because of how they perceived themselves as gentlemen, and certain actions shouldn't have been done. Like knowing that, it gives credence to this idea that IHL and human rights are inherent. They should be universal. I don't think people argue that it's outdated, some of the documents that we refer to, by pointing back to the fact that it's become customary. Like we know this, we've been doing this for so long that even if it is outdated, does that not still support the very principles and the very foundations on which these documents helped create our society? Can we do better? As weapons changes, war changes, as our interactions with each other changes, as we become more virtual, does that change how we interact, or does it mean that we need to make sure that we're more consistent on these things? So once again, I could keep going, but it's been a great opportunity. I'm still relatively new. I'm still learning a lot. Still have a lot of work to do in the future, but my mind is already working on like training opportunities and things that we can do to like to continue this great work and support it in whatever capacity that I can. But yeah.
Before we go on to our next question, I want to remind you guys that feel free to type any questions that you have for Ms. Sodipo in the chat, and she will answer them. So, Ms. Sodipo, do you have any advice on how to be more involved as a teenager?
Absolutely. Volunteering, like I said, yes, it looks good on a college application. I do not knock that at all, but you also learn things about yourself. If you have an interest, you have an idea of where you want to go to school, what you want to study, volunteer in that sector and find out what you love and what you don't love. You don't have to wait till you're in college or you're trying to apply for a job. Definitely get involved in projects and programs that you find interesting. Sorry, there's a concert going on outside my office. But there's so many ways that you guys can get involved, even if it's with your church group or with your student body, or if it's picking up garbage, or if you realize that, there's a problem and you can very easily see a solution for it, like work on delivering that solution. It really might be as simple as like, our parking lot at our school, this one section always floods. Why does it flood? And then realizing, there's trash blocking the drain. And so the water is just collecting. Pick up the trash and like work with your school administration on making sure there are trash cans around the parking lot so that doesn't happen, or moving the leaves, or like just little things like that. Sometimes it might seem like a small thing, but it leads to bigger questions and bigger moments of development and curiosity. Definitely get involved with YAC. I highly recommend it. It's just a great way of exploring. But there are tons of other programs and clubs that do things like this, and I find what you love. I mean, if it's cooking, then cook, and then donate your food to your local food bank, or volunteer at your local food bank and like try out new recipes. don't kill anybody, don't do any food poisoning, but do what is of interest to you and explore it. Absolutely.
I think that's about it for tonight. Thank you so much, Ms. Sodipo, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was incredible asking you questions and finding out a lot more about your past and your job now.
On the screen, there is a QR code for a short feedback survey to make our campaign better. We would appreciate it if you guys could fill it out. Thank you guys so much for joining. We hope to see you guys at our next event.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.